6:30 and 7. Technically, Sandoval and
I think somebody is an employee of that company, but it's not putting in any hours.
That's why the Angelica question.
It's a 12-hour minimum.
This is the minimum wage, this is the minimum compensation.
I'm talking about that.
I think there's a 12-hour window.
This, it's the same for this one. Covers any employee who works more hours in the city. Or contractor who has contracts with the city.
Well, so if, you mean, if a company had 40,000 employees, then
We visited security company that had a bunch of security hours, which is 740.
You got a place like the laundry in Vallejo where,
Yeah, Angelica.
yeah, where there's 2 million employees, so there's no way of tracking.
Yeah.
That's embarrassing when a large contract like City General cannot make up 10%. Also, we're working now on the anti-sweatshop. Larry and I went to the first meeting of anti-sweatshop initiative.
Yeah.
That the city can't buy any products from any sweatshop in the world. And we gotta buy local laws, we're trying to get in.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
You and Larry are working on that, huh?
No, we got, of course, Carl couldn't go, we went to the first meeting of it. And one thing I'm trying to put into it, that I don't know if it's legal or not, to ban the city from buying any product produced by labor in prisons. Prison labor.
I wonder if many of this anti-sweatshop legislation have that caveat.
Yeah. I don't know. They said Bush might have put a thing in that forbids. That would be an interesting thing to find out. In the anti-sweatshop thing, I want to put a anti-prison labor thing. I don't know who actually has that in their rules. I don't know if George Bush suddenly rushed that through Congress that you can't do it. You know, prison labor be expensive. It's awful cheap, and they sure make a profit off.
How much is your minimum wage? Minimum wage for the jobs in America?
Oh, well, we make way above the minimum wage. I mean, because we're local too at SBC Park. My wage goes to over $15 an hour starting April 1st. I'll be making over $15 an hour. Yeah. I mean, because we're represented by local too. And then these airport jobs, you know, that I'm telling you, stuff mentioned to you. The local two has what is called a partnership agreement with all of the vendors that are going to do the concessions or snack bars and SFO.
Yeah.
The workers in those respective concession stands have to agree that they want to be represented by local two. So one of the things that I'm trying to do is, you know, is get these people that were in this class with me to agree to sign the cards that local two has so that they can be represented by local two.
Sounds good.
Yeah. I mean, they're gonna, you know, local two's gonna use me once I get hired by the airport to help in this process.
What, you know, I forgot what the local two is.
The hotel and restaurant.
Hotel, that's
That's
right.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. They represent all of the hotels in San Francisco. I mean,
Martina.
Is it 14 of those?
There's a group that you guys don't like and we don't like either. The San Francisco Restaurant, Golden Gate Restaurant,
Yeah, the Golden Gate Restaurant.
yeah. Yeah, they were against this.
That doesn't surprise me.
You know, you will not believe the rumor they sent out. They said the average waiter makes $10 an hour in tips.
No, it doesn't come as any surprise to me that the Golden Gate Restaurant Association will be opposed to this.
I think too. I think we're paying what the management should.
Yeah.
When you tip someone,
Yeah,
you're doing part of management's
yeah.
wages. I think that's wrong.
I know, but, they're saying that there's $10 an hour in tips. I don't know of any waiter that gets $10 an hour. We have been dealing with them. Oh, I've done it.
Mark,
To this meeting with Supervisor Sandoval, and later with Supervisor Maxwell. And just very briefly by way of introduction, the Living Wage Coalition is a coalition of low-wage workers and their allies, been in existence since 1998. We were active in the passage of the minimum compensation ordinance and the healthcare accountability ordinance that you'll hear more about later in this meeting. And we continue to work for the implementation, for the strengthening of the city's living wage laws. And basically our goal is that every person who is working at a full-time job should be able to earn enough to live on. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Larry Lattimore. And go ahead, Larry.
okay, we're gonna get started and move forward because we think that there'll be at least another 20, 30 people coming tonight. But I'd like to thank everyone for coming and being on time. For those of you who don't know, this is Supervisor Sandoval. He's agreed to come out here, and this is his district, and deal with some of the issues that we know that applies to not only the minimum wage ordinance, but also the Healthcare Accountability Act. So I want to push forward and just kind of give you some of the challenges that we've encountered in trying to bring these different laws not only into effect, but also to make sure that companies are complying with the law. Now, for those of you who don't know, the minimum compensation ordinance actually started out as a living wage. It was a negotiated settlement, and in the process, we had to compromise on some issues. But as it stands right now, it pays $10.70.
Since most of the people over there, do you mind if I go like this? That way I can read it good?
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Very good.
Yeah, thank you.
But, yeah, so we wanted to be all-inclusive. We were actually asking for $14 an hour and a host of other things. But we wanted to make a step forward, and so we know that it covered more than 30,000 people at the time, people who were working on contracts for the city, people who wanted at least 10 and a quarter, that's what it started out. But anyway, those people get 12 days off and 10 unpaid sick days for illnesses. So that was a good move forward. But in many cases, we wanted to address people's health needs. And those were basically covered by the Healthcare Accountability Act. Well, that necessarily covers the worker, but that doesn't necessarily cover his spouse or his children, so therefore he could still be placed in a very vulnerable situation should his family members be sick. So we came up with the Healthcare Accountability Act, and you can see that can everyone see?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it offers, there was 3 ways that an employer could actually comply with this law. That was to offer benefits that meet the minimum standard for 1 calendar month after the employee starts, or pay $150 per hour, up to $60 a week for each employee, or pay $150 per hour to the employee so that he could get his own coverage. And then the third thing is the problem, because the way it's been implemented, the third item has yet to materialize as a viable way for people to get insurance or health coverage. Pay a set amount into the city for a city administrative health benefit program for all its employees. So what we need to understand is that in many cases, in this case for now, people are busy working. They are, they have issues in transportation. All these things make it very difficult for them to organize. There's no reason why, I expect some more people, but there's no reason why there shouldn't be 80, 100 people here right now. But that's the way I feel about it. But in this group of workers, we all have some issues, and I think that together with the supervisor, we can actually figure out a way or come to some type of agreement on a plan so that we can move forward. Now, I know that there was a couple of issues because I talked to people coming in, and I think that under the circumstances, we should be willing to explore what it is that is concerning the people. Now, I know, Richard, you said that you had an issue that you wanted to bring up.
Yeah. Should I come up front?
Well, if you want. That's
Okay.
cool.
I'm Richard Abrahams, and I'm a member of Unite Here Local 2, the Hotel and Restaurant Workers Union, and I also belong to the San Francisco chapter of Healthcare for All. And what I'd like to do is ask the supervisor if he'd entertain the idea of amending the minimum compensation ordinance to include workers on city property. And that includes the airport, the port, the Fisherman's Wharf area, Pier 39, Candlestick Park, Pacific Bell Park, Moscone Convention Center, Bill Graham Civic Auditorium, Golden Gate Park, parks and recreation lands, and city-owned golf courses and city-owned buildings. Now, as I'm posing that question to you, to ask you if you'd entertain the idea of amending the minimum compensation ordinance, as I pointed out to you when I introduced myself to you, I work at some of these locations, so I feel I'm in a better position than a lot of other people who work at some of these locations that I mentioned. I am employed by the San Francisco Giants company called Center Plate that does the food and beverage at now SBC Park. I work at Candlestick Park for the 49ers during the fall-winter months of every year. I've been with Center Plate dating back to 1997. It looks like I'm going to be employed by the airport. They've now opened up, they're opening up 28 new snack bars and concession stands by the end of the year. They opened the first series of those snack bars and concession stands on the 8th of this month. These are those houses that I mentioned, the airport, SBC Park, the Candlestick Park are already local 2 houses, as is Moscone Center. Again, what I'd like to ask of you, the question I pose to you is, would you entertain amending the minimum wage, the minimum compensation ordinance?
Yeah, to answer your question, yeah, without a doubt. You're too nice because when you ask a politician if he entertains something, well, sure, you can entertain. I'd entertain it, of course. I do more than consider it. But let me say, you know, I want to say that I'm very sorry that I can't stay with you longer. I just didn't want to miss the meeting entirely. So I thought I'd you know, at least come at the beginning and show my support. So I think, you know, there's a lot to do there. And I can tell you a lot of reasons why I think it would be a good thing to support it, but for now, I'll just leave it at that. You know, we got a lot of work to do to get the 8 votes necessary to pass it, to make sure the mayor doesn't veto it. And, you know, you're not gonna hear from me tonight or anytime be saying, oh, the poor restaurants are gonna go out of business, or the businesses, you know, they can't do something. If they're making money in San Francisco, they can afford to pay us, you know, a decent wage.
Well, so, if I could just ask, I mean, so you, based on what you just said, Supervisor, you'd be willing to work to amend the current legislation?
Yes.
Okay, well, like I said, this is actually our third meeting. We've actually got other supervisors to come to their districts. And I think that in many ways, it's good that, you know, like you come, but when it comes down to voting, I mean, like, would you be in a position to actually come to the aid of some of the low and no wage workers? And
Are you asking me what I vote for?
Right.
Yeah, of course.
okay.
But, you know, we all have to work hard, and there's a lot of work to do to organize so that the other supervisors, you know, are there with us.
Okay, introduce yourself.
Brian Hill.
Brian.
Brian Hill.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I just had something I want to read to the supervisor.
Okay, well, come on.
My name is Brian Hill. I'm a displaced worker from DPW. We used to do a lot of emergency work with the police, fire department, cleaning out homeless in campus and stuff. But anyway, I was displaced with about 70 other workers by Muhammad Nuru. You know, so he started a training program, 7501, which cut the pay in half. And now we know the living wage in San Francisco is $23.79 for a single person with a kid.
That's what you have to have to survive.
Right, that's what you have to have. But he cut it in half, giving these workers the hope and belief that they would be hired permanent with the city after 2 years, but the program ends in 2 years. So when they get up to $18, they'll be turned back to the streets. So he's led all these people to believe that they have a future with the city, and they don't. And a lot of us that took the civil service test, he broke the rules and hired who he wanted, hired family, friends.
Nepotism.
Yeah, nepotism, favoritism. He did all this with the facade that he was really opening up new jobs, but they're dead-end jobs. By the time you get up to a certain amount, the job ends. And we have been working there, some of us 3 years, some of us 10 years, that were laid off. We had great evaluations, and a lot of people didn't have evaluations that were high. They forged evaluations and stuff and brought them in because these were people he had made promises to. You know, we have a meeting with the mayor Monday. He counseled with us yesterday. He's supposed to meet with us yesterday. And all I'm asking is that we have all the unions, the labor council, and everyone backing us. That we could have your backing. We have Supervisor Pesky says he's pushing for an investigation into Department of Public Works, into because it's 70 to 80 dislocated workers that had been here for years. Okay, we had a physical and an oil examination. Now the oil examination was tape, but no one could come up with the tape of all the people. Started out with 8,000, somehow they broke it down to 800 people.
So what do you think the supervisor did?
I think the supervisor, he's a supervisor, he should be able to get hold of this tape and go over this tape and listen to the 200 interviews. It's only 5 questions apiece. Maybe you could have staff do it, I know you're busy. But it would show that some of us were ranked up high. Then after the oil interview, we were ranked, putting it back with new people that had just started the job that no way they could know what to do, were placed in our position. So if we can get your support, we'll be there Monday morning. Hopefully you can come. We'll have a press conference with the mayor. Hopefully we'll see you there. Thank you.
Well, it's good to, you know, just to hear these things, because, you know, usually half the battle is just becoming educated about it. So I will talk to Muhammad Nuru about it, and, you know, I will talk to Aaron Peskin about it and see, you know, where we're at. I'm not going to be here on Monday, so I can't tell you that I'll join you. but you told me your story, I'm not gonna forget, and I will talk to them about it.
Could somebody from the office be there instead?
This is a meeting with Mayor Newsom, okay? I will check with them. I mean, if I have a meeting in my office, I don't, you know,
Necessarily.
I don't necessarily want somebody from another supervisor's office there.
well,
So we'll check with them, and if it's fine with them, I'll send somebody up there.
We spoke with, Mr. Minos and, the state treasurer. Actually, yeah, and they said that they would tell the mayor to definitely be there since we already had this meeting set up. And like one we had Tuesday, he took off on us while we were out there. But he said definitely he would be there tomorrow. I mean, Monday.
Well, okay, Kay, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm a former social worker, I retired, and there's a couple of amendments I was wondering if you would support, and one of them has to do with the CalWorks program. Are you familiar with that?
Right, the amendment would be, excuse me, is to include them under all these, to make all these ordinances apply to them.
And then also for the general assistance and personal assistance, this is a single welfare, where the hours usually, that they would get the same wages, so, you know, they wouldn't be working 8 hours at essentially $3 an hour. They would be given the same salaries as everyone else.
A wage so they could actually break the bond of poverty.
And they wouldn't have to work the 8 hours, or they could do job search and that kind of thing, you know, if it resulted in the GA stipend. You get my meaning?
I
I'm
get you,
not being very
I understand
clear.
what you're saying. Basically, welfare to work, they deserve to earn the same amount of money. If they're working, they deserve to earn the minimum wage,
Same,
minimum
right.
compensation. I understand.
Right.
Yeah, the issue in my mind is the cost, and I've been told by a couple different people it could be done in a way that it wouldn't cost the city any more money. Let me look through those details. If it's gonna cost the city a lot more money, then, you know, I gotta be honest with you. I mean, there's a lot of things that are kind of in the mix right now, because, you know, we're probably gonna cut $100 million or more from this budget, and it could mean, you know, closing this rec center, or not doing one thing, or not doing another thing, or maybe not employing as many people, but paying them all, you know, a living wage or a decent wage. So those are all things I can't just sit here and say, yeah, I mean, I'll support it in a vacuum. I've got to, you know, talk to people about that. But I'm sympathetic.
Are you familiar that the GA wages, the GA job sweeps, street
sweepers.
sweeping, and were once fully paid positions? and
Union jobs.
This is years ago, and they were making like $17 an hour,
Right.
you know,
And
so
now they're
this,
sweeping this, now they're using GA
like,
workers.
now this is being given to people for their stipend of what, $3.59 a month,
Right.
you know? So the jobs were taken away from, and they were unionized, a lot of them.
Right.
And this was under Feinstein, wherever she was, it was the 80s or something.
Right.
Anyway, I want to let you know it's
It's still happening.
Yeah, that's what happened to us.
There you go. I see, Leon's in the, did you have a question for the supervisor?
Yeah,
You come in. Yeah. You got about 5 minutes. He said he's got a minute.
Hi Supervisor, I'm
Hi,
Lee
Leon.
Sharp, I'm from the SEIU United Healthcare Workers, representing the IHS home care workers. And I think the issues about, you know, particularly on home care and non-profit worker is there is there's a blanket waiver in the provision of minimum wage ordinance that, you know, can exempt large non-profits to absorb the increased labor costs in order to, you know, require them to mandate for the payment of they pay time off and the cost of living increase. That's, you know, we try to, you know, in a way understand that, look at, you know, how to support, if you can support you know, have the city to commit for adequate funding to remove that banquet waiver. I mean, I know the issues is of course like adequate funding, particularly right now. IHSS is not particularly facing these issues, but rather the state is putting out their funding proposal, which city have backfilled 19 million. But, you know, we're looking at a longer term, not this budget years, to see if we can actually, particularly the sheer size of the home care workers, can actually cover by the funding, provide them with a paid time off. You know.
Well, it's a tough issue because, of course, the nonprofits provide really important services that everybody wants, and they're in as bad a shape as anybody. And I mean, whether it's La Raza Centro Legal, which I know that you represent the workers, or whether it's you know, it's the Mission Housing where I think you're organizing right now, or whether it's like the YMCA, which is very big, you know, and has a lot of operations. I can see that it's tough on them. And you're right, the issue is getting resources, getting the city maybe to generate some resources. You know, I'd be supportive of it. But let me say more. Next year, next June, or next November, excuse me, it will be the time when we put something on the ballot, most likely, to try and get those resources. You know, I want to say the Republicans, but I'm not sure, but I'll say it anyway, right? The Republicans put a measure on the ballot several years ago, was Prop 218, which says that we cannot put a revenue measure on our local ballot. We can't, like, let's say, tax downtown for something like this, and tax big businesses down for something like this, unless the Board of Supervisors is also up for election, you know. So this November, we're not up for election, so we can't do it this November. So next November, we can do it, and that's the time. Now, what's going to happen is that everybody's going to be coming and saying, I want a piece of whatever it is that, whatever money is raised. And there are a lot of people who are not probably in your allies, like maybe the Muni people are going to come and say, you know, we need more money, so whatever it is on the ballot, we need a piece of it. And you know, but there's all sorts of people that are kind of your allies, and we need to figure out how to get all of those allies together and agree, so nobody's totally left out in the cold. Because the folks from the, you know, child care advocates are going to want, you know, a piece of it, and the in-home supported service workers are going to want, you know, a piece of it, and the people who are working at the nonprofits potentially could want a piece of it. And I can think of, you know, 20 others who are, you know, working class and would support. So that's the challenge. That's the, you know, the kind of the timeline.
Supervisor, have you ever really investigated the people's budget? Have you looked at it?
I have read it.
Well, we've compiled that probably 5 years in a row. And if all the things that were implemented that basically we asked for, there would not be a shortfall. There would be, there may be even a surplus. But why is it so hard? Why is it so hard for
Supervisor Peskin, one of your allies, Colin.
Why is it so hard for the Board of Supervisors to just implement a simple thing? I mean, if you investigate it, you see it's got merit, then why can't we use that for a model and move forward?
Yeah. Well, you know, it is complicated, actually. You know, like last year, I was on the chair of the Budget Committee, and one of the people's budget, one of the proposals was to charge money for police reports. It seemed like a great idea. You know, you could charge $10, something like that, $15, $20. You know, a lot of people get them for their insurance, for their accidents and stuff like that, and they could easily pay for them. The insurance companies would pay for them. But when you start looking at it, you realize that actually, under the First Amendment and the Freedom of Information Act, the city cannot charge any money for it. And so the only thing we can charge is our actual cost to reproduce it. So, you know, the cost for the Xerox and so forth. And I don't, you know, I can't go through all the other items, but if you go through a lot of them, you know, there's always something like Prop 218 that means that you have to go on the ballot, but you can't go on the ballot until, you know, the supervisors are there. And so it starts breaking down that way. Some of the ideas were taken from it, the problem is that then we take the ideas, and instead of the money being spent on the things that you want it to be spent on, you know, it just gets sucked into the general pot of money. Although I thought we did a pretty good job last year because we added back a lot of nurses. We kept the mayor's office from privatizing jail health care. You know, a lot of good things did happen.
Yeah, but people have to compromise to add back, and like I said, the people's budget finds cost savings. And I know police get brand new vehicles every year. I mean, like, it's like a new car lot. I don't understand. And they need to get around too. I don't want to say, you know, that they should go back to the horse and buggy, but that might not be bad. But I mean, most budgets like for the hospital, you can't even challenge the old budget. You can only challenge the add-on. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of waste there.
I agree.
But that's my opinion, but I know you have to leave.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you.
But,
And you know, I come at it from an outsider perspective too. And, you know, once you get inside, you know, it's difficult to just say, yes, I'm gonna do this. I voted against the police cars last year.
Yeah.
I voted against them buying them. I was the only vote. It was a 10-1 vote.
we got one more question before you leave here.
My name is Leanne Harmon with the San Francisco Living Wage
Could you speak
Coalition.
up a little?
My name is Leanne with the San Francisco Living Wage Coalition. The minimum ordinance currently only covers for cost of living increases of 2.5% every year. And however, the consumer price index for all urban consumers shows that for the past 3 years, it's been increasing about 8%. So the current legislation only covers for about 7.5% of those increases. Would you support amending the ordinance so that it actually reflects cost of living increases as the consumer price index consumers indicates? Otherwise, wages will come back to poverty level as cost of living increases more and more.
Right. Well, you said it pretty clearly, and yes, I would support it. But you know, the hard work is organizing and getting 8 supervisors to say the same thing at the same time.
So, you think that you put yourself in a position where if all this is true, then you could vote to make the compensation equal to inflation?
Yes, I'm going to walk away from here thinking that we want to make it apply to the port. We want to make it apply to, you know, facilities like Pac Bell, to Candlestick, and that we're trying to get it to apply, that we're trying to increase the CPI, or the inflationary index.
Okay.
And you have my commitment on a yes vote.
Robert?
Just one question, please. My name is Robert Pender. I'm wondering who's gonna enforce this, or who is supposed to enforce it? And if they are, why aren't they doing it?
Well, I don't know really, but I would assume that it's probably the Office of Labor Standards Enforcement. And, you know, that's a new office that was created. And last year, they had, let's say, around 5 people. And when the mayor submitted his budget to us, he cut it to 2 people. And when I was through with the budget, we added back the 3 people. And last I heard, the mayor laid off those 3 people. So they're back down to 2 people. So that's who's supposed to enforce it, and that's why it's not getting enforced.
It's in the mayor's.
Because there's not, you know, the people are not there to do it. You know, and that's a good example of how, you know, I can say yes, and you might even get to 8 votes on the board of supervisors, but it's organizing and, you know, and getting people together that ultimately is going to make us, you know, win and keep winning.
Don't speak Spanish, no Chinese or any other language.
Right, so how can they?
My message, I'll leave you with this message. We're in it together.
Okay.
All right?
I want to
Thank
thank the supervisor.
But we're going to go back to an overview of the various ordinances that are now in place. The minimum compensation, healthcare accountability ordinance, and minimum wage ordinance. And you'll notice that 2 of these have very similar names. And there might be a little bit of confusion as to which is which, but Phil is going to enlighten us all about that, so I'm going to turn it over to him.
All right.
Member of the Living Wage Coalition, and my purpose is to clarify the three pieces of legislation that we're talking about tonight. So, the first one to look at is the minimum wage ordinance. This is a law that was passed by the voters. It took effect in January of last year. We passed a law that $8.50 per hour was the minimum wage in San Francisco locally. It's gone up to 8.62. It goes up with the consumer price index for urban wage earners every year. Who's covered? Employees who work at least 2 hours a week for any employer in San Francisco or on city property. So that's most everybody who's worked. There are a couple of exceptions to this law. Nonprofits and small businesses with fewer than 10 people working. But they're going to be phased in, and they will eventually come up to the full minimum wage with the other businesses by next year. So that's the most straightforward of the three ordinances. Any questions?
Yeah, Mark. What I wanted to ask is, I guess, I noticed today, I was down at the wharf, that In-N-Out Burgers is doing hiring, and that they have to pay $10 an hour. I mean, what they say the wage would be $10 an hour. I gather that, my assumption is right, that that's based on the impact of the minimum wage ordinance.
I think In-N-Out Burger has been famous for like 4 or 5 years anyway. But they have been paying their workers $10 an hour to start for a long time. So it has really no bearing, no connection with the minimum board, the health, the compensation.
And the other question that I want to ask is sort of something that the supervisor said at the tail end before he left, and that is the fact that there were 5 people working in the, I guess it's called the Labor Standards. He said something about the Labor Standards Commission or something, and that now they're back to 2 people, and they had 5, and it's sort of back and forth.
Talking about the enforcement.
The enforcement, and I guess what I'd like to pursue along those lines is that whole question based on what Leon, you said, and that is that if a worker isn't getting paid the wage, the living wage, and they're of Asian ascendancy or Chinese or Latino or some, and that what it sounded to me like, based on what the supervisor said, is that the whole question of enforcing the ordinance doesn't in fact get enforced because of language problems. I mean that's sort of the conclusion that I drew out of what the supervisor just said.
I see that problem.
Well, I think I can answer that.
You want us to?
Now, it sounds like somebody said it was understaffed, but what happens with the fines? I've been reading that that businesses are being fined. What happens with that money? And how much? I'm not expecting you to know, I'm just wondering if you have it.
It's a good question. I don't know. Does anybody know what happens to the funds?
And
I think questions like the case raising are the types of questions the living wage coalition needs to pose to elected officials.
just go straight to the office of the fund.
Yeah.
I don't know specifically in this case, but it's my understanding that whatever fines are collected go into the city general fund. because if you have an agency that is assessing a fine or a penalty, and the money comes back to the agency, that agency has a vested interest in seeing to it that people are fined and there are some supposedly problems.
Should be compensated with the fines. And those people that should be compensated would be the employees who are being impacted by the fact that the employer isn't enforcing or living up to the enforcement of the ordinance.
Makes sense? Okay, let's move on to the second piece of legislation, the minimum compensation ordinance. This is our living wage ordinance for San Francisco. It took effect in 1999, I believe. And it started out, as I said, at $10.25 an hour. It's been going up. We'd like to see it go up with the consumer price index. That's one of the changes we'd like to see in the legislation. It's not keeping up with the consumer price index. In any event, the minimum compensation ordinance requires not only a minimum payment of $10.77 an hour, it also requires 12 personal or sick days off per year paid, and it requires them to offer 10 unpaid days off for sick leave.
And I was telling Kay this, SFO is now opening up 28 concession stands or snack, what are called snack bars, by the end of the year. And I guess how I want to tie that in with what you just read is that if the minimum compensation ordinance and that aspect of it isn't being enforced, then it seems to me that, and the fact that I'm on the verge of getting hired at the airport in concessions and snack bars, that has a direct impact on me in that section of the minimum compensation ordinance. And I mean, I'm not hired yet, but it looks like I'm getting hired. And so it hits home with me as it relates to that part of the ordinance.
Did they tell you how much you might earn if you should get hired?
Well, these are all local 2 jobs.
But yeah, there's no.
And I have the contractual, the vendors that do the snack bars or the concessions and the agreement between them and local 2, and most of the starting wages are over the
Minimum compensation.
minimum compensation.
Yeah, there's a thing out to the airport, there's another ordinance that covers the airport in particular, but I forgot what it's called. But there's a part of the minimum compensation ordinance that says whichever is better for the employee will apply. So I don't think you have to worry about that particular thing.
True.
Okay.
I mean, but
You should be in a better place because
yeah.
not only are you in the union,
Yeah.
but there's another ordinance that applies to the airport in particular.
Okay, I'd like to move on to the third piece of legislation, which is the most complex of all, the healthcare accountability ordinance. We feel that a living wage is not only about how much you're paid and how many days off you get for being sick, but also healthcare is an important issue that comes up for low-wage workers. The healthcare accountability ordinance went into effect also in 1999. It gives choices to an employer. We can't mandate that an employer give health insurance to all the employees. So, offer health benefits that meet minimum standards in terms of co-payments and monthly payments, and start those health benefits within a month after the employee starts. In fact, we'd like to see all companies do that. That would be our choice. However, they have another choice. If they don't do that, they can pay $1.50 per hour to the city as a penalty for not having health care for those employees. The idea is that if health care isn't offered to low-wage workers in our city, then they're going to be accessing some kind of public health resources. It's going to end up costing the city money, and this penalty can go into the city coffers so that they can help pay for low-wage workers who don't have health care benefits. There's a third and a very important option the employers have, or actually, it's not for the employers. The third option is that the city will start a health benefits program for these workers. At the time that the legislation was passed, the details of this were not set. And so there's an ongoing negotiation to find out what kind of health benefit program this is going to be. But we'd certainly like to see a health benefit program where the employers could pay into the program and the employees could have a card where they could give the card to clinics in the city and get health care services. It's an ongoing process. We're working to make that happen. There are some other models from different areas. San Mateo County has a wellness program where people have a card, low-income people have a card, and they can go to any of 7 different clinics to get health care for themselves and their families. So there are models in different areas that we could use, and we're trying to push this forward. Who's covered by the Health Care Accountability Ordinance? It's not the same as the Minimum Compensation Ordinance. It's different. It covers employees of contractors or tenants of city property, people that work for tenants of city property, and there's a minimum contract size, minimum size of the company. So it's only larger companies that have relatively good-sized contracts with the city. The employee has to work for 20 or more hours per week, and that's going to change to 15 by July 1st, which is a nice improvement, for 130 days or more per year. There are exclusions for training programs and lots of other fine print excluding certain businesses from this ordinance. But we feel that it's an important ordinance, and healthcare is certainly an important issue for low-wage workers. We'd like to see, obviously, the coverage go to the families of the workers as well, and not just the individual workers.
Who's supposed to enforce that ordinance?
I'm assuming that it's the same enforcement group that enforces the other 2 ordinances, which is 5 people, and it's now 2 of this.
The minimum compensation ordinance and the healthcare accountability ordinance came into being at the same time. So it's their staff that actually was drafted to monitor the minimum wage raise last year. So it's basically the office, I can't remember.
Same office?
Right.
Labor standard enforcement.
Is it the same office or different?
Well, it's basically the same office. It includes Rich Waller and and there's a couple of other people, but I'm not. Carl's right there. Who else is in the Carl? Right.
It's called, yeah, it's called the minimum, minimum wage ordinance, compliance officer.
And Rich Walton is with that office? Oh, he got laid off.
We'll be presenting that in a bit.
I have one other, I have a question as relates to the health care accountability ordinance. And that is, the portions of this ordinance that are not enforced in current, does anybody know what this hearing that Tom Amiano's doing on the 6th of April is? Carl, have you heard about that?
Yeah, that's a different legislation that's looking at universal health care.
Oh, that's looking at